What do you do when an 8-year-old girl stands up in a packed courtroom and asks one question no judge ever wants to hear? Before this case was over, a father's pride would collapse, a room full of strangers would go silent, and one sentence from Judge Caprio would turn a routine hearing into the kind of moment people never forget. Drop a comment telling us what you think the judge said first. Hit that subscribe button if you believe one moment of truth can change an entire family. Like this video if you believe justice should protect people, not just punish them. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that mercy and accountability can live in the same room. It was 9:08 on a gray Tuesday morning, November 12, 2025, in Providence Municipal Court, the old wood-paneled courtroom on Dorrance Street where the lights always felt a little too bright and the silence always felt a little too heavy. Case number M25-41877 sounded simple on paper. 11 unpaid municipal citations. Failure to appear. 1 temporary bench warrant hold. Possible remand if the court found willful disregard. But nobody in that room was staring at the paperwork. They were staring at the man in the black Nike windbreaker, standing at the defense table like he didn't care. His name was Marcus Bell, 34 years old, 6 feet even, broad shoulders, faded Levi's, scuffed tan Timberland boots, a 2-day beard, eyes that looked tired, angry, and embarrassed all at the same time. He had the kind of face you see in court all the time, the face of somebody telling himself he was only there because the world was unfair, not because he had made a mess, not because he had lied, not because he had waited too long. And next to the third-row aisle, clutching a purple backpack with a peeled-off frozen patch, sat his daughter. Mia Bell, 8 years old, hair in 2 uneven braids, pink sweater from Target with 1 stretched cuff, white socks with tiny yellow stars, a spiral notebook in her lap. She kept swinging her feet, but they never touched the floor. The clerk, Maria Conti, called the case again. Marcus Bell. Marcus stepped forward with the kind of swagger that immediately put the room against him. "Yeah, I'm here," he said. "Not good morning, not your honor." Just that. A few people in the gallery shifted in their seats. Judge Frank Caprio looked over his glasses, calm, still, almost gentle, the way he always did when someone walked in believing volume was power. "Good morning, sir," he said. Marcus shrugged, "Morning." The prosecutor for the city, Eli Navarro, a neat man in a charcoal suit and burgundy tie, stood and summarized the file. 6 parking citations. 2 moving-related municipal violations connected to a suspended city registration status. 3 failures to appear. 1 warning ignored. 1 payment plan opened, then abandoned. 1 outstanding balance of $1,842 before late fees. Total due with penalties, $2,317. Then Navarro added 1 sentence that changed the temperature in the room. The city is prepared to ask for custodial sanctions due to repeated noncompliance. That word landed hard. Custodial. Not a fine, not another warning. Custody. Jail. Mia looked up so fast her backpack slipped off her shoulder. Marcus leaned forward on the table. "For tickets, you're gonna talk about custody over tickets? That's crazy." Navarro didn't raise his voice. "Not over tickets alone, Mr. Bell. Over repeated contempt and willful failure to comply." Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's fancy wording for squeezing money out of working people. There was a faint murmur in the gallery. Judge Caprio tapped the bench lightly, not angry, just firm. "Mr. Bell, this is your opportunity to be heard. Don't waste it by fighting everybody in the room." Marcus spread his hands. "I'm not fighting, I'm telling the truth." Judge Caprio looked at him for 2 seconds longer than usual. Long enough for Marcus to realize he was being measured, not interrupted. "Truth," the judge said softly, "has a way of becoming easier when the facts arrive." That line hit the room like a pin drop. Maria Conti stopped writing for half a second. A man in a red Sox cap in the back nodded under his breath. Marcus rolled his jaw. He still thought this was about money. He still thought he could out-attitude the moment. He had no idea that within the hour, everybody in that courtroom would know his wife's name, his daughter's fear, the exact sound his own voice made when he lied, and the promise he had broken long before he broke the law. If you've ever seen somebody talk tough right before life humbles them, hit subscribe right now, because what happened next is exactly why courtroom stories grip millions of people. And if you believe children should never have to carry adult fear, like this video before we go any further. Judge Caprio asked the first question. Why is your daughter here today? Marcus didn't even turn around. School conference day. That answer came too fast. The judge noticed. So did everyone else. School conference day, Judge Caprio repeated, at 9 in the morning. Marcus hesitated, half day. Maria Conti glanced down at the school note in the file and frowned slightly. The judge didn't press, not yet. Instead, he turned to the city. Let's hear the basis for the request. Navarro opened a folder thick enough to make Marcus finally stop leaning. Your Honor, the city's position is not based only on unpaid tickets. It is based on what happened March 18, 2025, on Atwells Avenue at 7:43 a.m., and on the defendant's conduct after receiving repeated opportunities to resolve these matters. He lifted a still photograph. Even from the bench, you could see the blue stripes. Accessible access aisle. Marcus's blue 2011 Ford Escape was parked diagonally across it, nose over the curb line, rear blocking the van ramp zone beside a handicap space outside Rose's pharmacy and deli. Marcus immediately spoke over him. I was there 3 minutes. Navarro didn't react. The city has surveillance footage and officer body cam. 3 minutes, Marcus repeated. And during those 3 minutes, Navarro said, a woman attempting to exit a wheelchair-accessible van fell on wet pavement. The courtroom changed. Not loud, not dramatic. Just changed. The woman's name was Bernice Hall, 72 years old, retired library assistant, lavender scarf, osteoporosis, hairline fracture to the wrist, bruised hip, torn skin at the elbow, hospital evaluation, 6 weeks in a brace. Marcus shook his head immediately. I didn't make her fall. Navarro turned the photograph toward the judge. The city alleges his vehicle blocked the deployed ramp zone, forcing Ms. Hall and her grandson to attempt an unsafe reposition in the rain. Marcus's face tightened, but he kept the posture, kept the mask. Alleges, he said. That's the word you used, alleged. Judge Caprio watched him carefully. Some people mistake composure for softness. That is always their first mistake. Mr. Bell, the judge said, were you parked there? Marcus exhaled through his nose. Yeah, for a minute. So that part is not alleged. Marcus looked away. The room stayed still. From the third row, a little voice came through the silence. Are you sending Daddy to jail? Nobody breathed. Mia was on her feet now, notebook clutched to her chest, eyes wide and wet and terrified. It wasn't loud. That made it worse. No tantrum, no scream. Just a child asking the one question adults had been trying to keep away from her. Every head in the room turned. Marcus froze. For the first time all morning, the anger left his face. Judge Caprio's expression softened in a way only a few people in that courtroom would ever forget. He leaned forward, not toward Marcus but toward Mia. What's your name, sweetheart? Mia. Mia, he said gently, I haven't decided anything, do you understand? She swallowed hard. My aunt said if it's contempt they can take him. There were audible whispers now. Marcus turned around fast. Mia, sit down, sit down. But Judge Caprio lifted a hand. No, let her stand. Then he said something so quietly, the room leaned in to hear it. A child should never have to guess what justice means by watching grown-ups panic. That was the first quote people would repeat online. It wouldn't be the last. Mia sat slowly. Marcus looked like he wanted the floor to open. Judge Caprio turned back to the file. Proceed. Navarro called Officer Dana Lowell, Providence Parking Enforcement Supervisor, to the front. She wore a navy municipal jacket with reflective trim, hair pulled into a low bun, body cam clipped to her chest in the footage that would soon be shown on the courtroom monitor. She had a clean voice, controlled, no drama. That almost made it harsher. At 7:43 a.m., she said, I observed a blue Ford Escape parked across the accessible access aisle beside a marked handicap space. It was raining. The curb area was slick. A gray Dodge Grand Caravan with disability plates arrived. The passenger, identified as Bernice Hall, was unable to exit safely because the van ramp area was obstructed. Marcus muttered, I was buying milk. Dana continued, I approached the store entrance and encountered Mr. Bell. I asked him to move the vehicle. He responded with profanity. Marcus threw up a hand. Now we're talking about words, really. Dana looked straight ahead. Then, while the van repositioned, Ms. Hall lost her footing. Judge Caprio nodded to the clerk. The footage was played. The screen flickered. Rain on a lens. Blue paint on pavement. Marcus's Ford crooked across the striped zone like it owned the place. You could hear windshield wipers from a nearby car. You could hear Dana Lowell's boots on wet concrete. You could hear her call, Sir, is this your vehicle? Then the camera turned. Marcus came out of Rose's holding a white plastic bag and a black coffee. Carhartt beanie, gray hoodie, same jaw tension, same defensive eyes. That your car? Dana asked. I'm leaving. You can't park there. It's 2 seconds. That space is for access. I said I'm leaving. Then on the audio from just off camera, someone shouted, Careful, Nana. There was a sudden scramble, a metallic scrape, a cry of pain that was not loud but sharp enough to make 2 people in the courtroom flinch. The camera jerked toward Bernice Hall on one knee, her grandson trying to hold her up under a clear umbrella that had folded backward in the wind. Mia covered her mouth. Marcus stared at the screen, then down at the table. Dana's recorded voice came through the speakers. Ma'am, don't move. EMS is on the way. Then Marcus's voice from behind the camera, smaller now. I didn't touch her. No one had said he did. That was the point. When the video ended, the room was dead quiet. Judge Caprio folded his hands. Mr. Bell, do you understand why that matters? Marcus swallowed. I get she got hurt. I didn't mean for that. Intent matters, the judge said. So do consequences. Marcus said nothing. The prosecutor moved to the next exhibit, a printed compliance history. Late notices mailed April 2, May 11, June 27. Payment plan started July 8. First installment of $75 made July 12. Then nothing. Court dates August 1, September 9, October 3. No appearance. Navarro paused. But there is more. That phrase alone made Marcus finally look uneasy. Because people can talk their way around one mistake. Patterns are harder. Navarro held up another document. On October 3, when Mr. Bell failed to appear, the court mailed a final warning that custodial sanctions could be requested. That notice was not returned. It was delivered. Marcus rubbed his forehead. I was working. The judge looked at him. Working where? Harborline Logistics. Navarro glanced down. He was terminated from Harborline on September 14. Marcus went still. The gallery reacted with that soft sound humans make when a lie falls apart in public. Not a gasp, not a laugh, just a collective shift. Marcus's eyes narrowed. That place doesn't know what they're talking about. Navarro reached for another paper. The city has an employer separation form, signed by Human Resources Director Shonda Patel. Marcus's jaw tightened so hard you could see the muscle flicker. And that was when Judge Caprio did something unexpected. He didn't scold him. He asked for a sealed envelope from the clerk's desk. Maria Conti nodded and retrieved a pale manila envelope marked for judicial review. The judge opened it slowly, read one page, then a second. His expression changed. Not softer, more complicated. He looked back at Marcus. "Mr. Bell," he said, "where were you on June 27 at 2:15 p.m.? Marcus blinked. "I don't know." "Think carefully." Marcus crossed his arms, "Probably at work." Judge Caprio glanced down again. "No, you were not." Marcus said nothing. The judge lifted a paper. "According to St. Anne's Hospice records, at 2:15 p.m. on June 27, you were signing release paperwork for your wife, Alina Bell." The room lost all sound. Marcus's face changed so fast it was almost painful to watch. His arrogance didn't fade. It cracked. Mia looked up at him. The judge continued, steady, respectful. "The court has before it documentation that one of the citations tied to this file may have been issued in error through an automated plate entry while you were at St. Anne's with your wife." Now the courtroom leaned in for a different reason. Because everything had just changed. Not everything, but enough. Navarro stepped in carefully. "Your Honor, the city is prepared to withdraw citation 25P1196 pending verification of the plate misread. However, that does not affect the remaining violations or failures to appear." And there it was. One break in the wall. But not freedom. One error by the system. But not innocence. Judge Caprio set the paper down. "Mr. Bell, why didn't you tell the court your wife was in hospice?" Marcus looked down at his hands. When he answered, the voice was lower. "Because it sounds like begging." That line hit hard. Not because it excused him. Because it explained him. Judge Caprio nodded once. Sometimes the people most desperate for mercy are the ones most offended by needing it. Marcus looked up. His eyes were wet now, but he blinked it away immediately, almost angrily, like emotion itself was an insult. If this story is already making you feel two things at once, drop a comment telling us whether Marcus deserved punishment, mercy, or both. Because this is where courtroom stories become impossible to forget. Nothing is ever as simple as the first 30 seconds make it look. The judge invited more context. Marcus didn't take the invitation well at first. He spoke in fragments. His wife Alina had died July 2, 5 days after the hospice paperwork. Pancreatic cancer, diagnosed 18 months earlier. Worked at a daycare on Chalkstone Avenue before she got sick. Loved lemon candles. Hated hoe. Spittle coffee. Used to leave post-it notes inside Mia's lunchbox with crooked smiley faces because she said store-bought notes felt lazy. He said those details fast, like ripping tape off skin. Then he shut down again. Navarro kept pressing. "Were you aware of the citations before her death?" "Yes." "Did you contact the court?" "No." "Did you open a payment plan?" "Yes." "Did you stop paying?" Marcus clenched his jaw. "Yeah." "Why?" "Because there wasn't enough." "Enough for what?" Marcus finally snapped. "For life, man, for any of it." Judge Caprio didn't let the heat rise. "Mr. Bell, answer the question." Marcus stared at the bench, breathing through his nose. "For rent, Medicine, gas, groceries, funeral costs, school stuff, everything. The judge nodded. That is an answer. Then the court heard from two more people. Angela Brooks, school counselor at Robert F. Kennedy Elementary, walked up in a camel coat and low black heels, carrying a folded attendance summary. She said Mia had been arriving early for school since September, usually with her hair brushed but uneven, lunch packed but repetitive, often peanut butter on white bread, apple slices turning brown by 10:00 a.m. That told me her father was trying, Angela said. Then she added the sentence that hit the gallery differently. But it also told me they were running on fumes. She described Mia falling asleep once during silent reading, described calling Marcus and hearing forklift beeps in the background one day, dishwashers clattering another day, and once, pure road noise, like he had answered from inside a car. Mr. Bell never failed to return my calls, she said. He just never asked for help. The judge looked at Marcus. Why not? Marcus gave a bitter half-laugh. Because when a man asks for help, people hear failure. Judge Caprio shook his head slightly. No, a child hears honesty. Second quote. You could feel people writing it in their minds. Then came Luis Mendoza, Marcus's downstairs neighbor from Cranston Street. 46. UPS driver, navy polo, gold wedding band. Tired eyes of a man who knew what overtime smelled like. He testified that Marcus often left before dawn and came back after dark. That after Alina died, he sometimes heard Mia practicing multiplication alone at the kitchen table through the thin apartment wall. That Marcus had sold a PlayStation, a Milwaukee drill set, and Alina's old Honda Civic to keep up with bills. Lewis hesitated before his last statement. I also heard him lose his temper, he said. Marcus closed his eyes. Lewis continued, not hitting, not hurting anybody, but yelling at himself, at the sink, at the wall, at whatever was in his head. The room got still again. Because grief sounds holy from a distance. Up close, it often sounds ugly. Judge Caprio thanked both witnesses. Then he turned back to Marcus. You have people willing to speak for your effort, he said. That is not something every defendant has. Marcus nodded once, barely. But effort, the judge continued, is not the same as responsibility. Marcus looked up, and this time there was no fight in his face, just exhaustion. Then Eli Navarro cleared his throat. There is one more exhibit, Your Honor. Marcus closed his eyes again. There is always one more exhibit. The clerk played surveillance footage from October 3, the date Marcus had claimed he missed court because of work. Black and white camera, exterior, convenience store on Broadway, 8:57 a.m. Marcus's blue Ford pulled into frame. He stepped out, bought cigarettes, coffee, stood outside the store smoking for 7 minutes, then drove away. The timestamp mattered. Court began at 9:00. The municipal building was 6 blocks away. He could have made it. He chose not to. When the video ended, you could hear someone in the back whisper, "Oh man." Marcus put both hands on the table and stared down. Judge Caprio's voice stayed calm. Mr. Bell, were you working? No. Were you on your way to court? Marcus took a breath. I was trying to go. But you didn't. No. Why? Marcus said nothing. The judge waited. That silence got longer and heavier, and more unbearable until Marcus finally spoke. Because I knew I couldn't pay, he said. And I knew if I came in here and stood where I'm standing now, I'd have to say that out loud. I couldn't do it. Navarro stepped back. He didn't need another question. The truth was finally in the room. Judge Caprio looked at Marcus for a long moment. Then he said the line that would later get clipped, replayed, stitched, quoted, and shared by people who had never spent a day in that courtroom. Poverty explains pressure. It does not excuse lies. Third quote. No one moved. Marcus's eyes filled, but he didn't wipe them. The judge kept going. Do you know what your lie cost you? Marcus shook his head once. It cost you credibility, and when a man loses that, even his pain starts to sound convenient. Marcus lowered his face. That was the moment of realization. Not theatrical, not explosive. Just a man hearing the exact shape of his own damage. Mia was watching him now, not scared for the first time but confused, like she was seeing something new. Adults think children notice outcomes. They notice cracks. Judge Caprio leaned back slightly. I want to hear from Ms. Hall. A side door opened, and Bernice Hall entered slowly with a silver cane and her grandson Tyler beside her. Bernice wore a lavender cardigan, pearl earrings, and a wrist brace the color of oatmeal. Tyler, 16, held a folder of medical summaries and looked like he had not wanted to come but came anyway because someone had to. Bernice sat in the witness chair and adjusted herself with care. The judge's voice softened immediately. Ms. Hall, good morning. Good morning, Your Honor. Are you comfortable? I will be in a minute. A small laugh moved through the courtroom. Even Marcus smiled for half a second before remembering where he was. Bernice looked at him, not with hatred, not even with anger, but with the hard disappointment only older people know how to deliver. You probably don't remember my face, she said. Marcus shook his head. I'm sorry, I don't. I remember yours, she said. That line landed like a stone. She told the court what March 18 felt like from her side. The rain, Tyler lifting the umbrella, the van driver trying to angle closer, the blue SUV cutting across the safety stripes like they were decorative, the panic that comes when your body is slow and the world is fast and somebody else's convenience turns your ordinary errand into a risk. I kept thinking, Bernice said, if I were 30 years younger this would still have been rude. But because I was 72, it became dangerous. Marcus swallowed hard. Tyler added one sentence of his own. She cried in the urgent care bathroom because she didn't want my mom to think she couldn't go out alone anymore. That did it. That was the outrage moment. Not the fall. Not the fracture. The bathroom tears. That image moved through the gallery like electricity. Marcus whispered, barely audible, I didn't know that. Bernice looked at him. No, you didn't, because you didn't stay long enough to know anything except your own emergency. The judge let that sit. Then he asked the question everyone expected. Ms. Hall, what do you want the court to do? Marcus shut his eyes. Mia gripped her notebook so tightly, her knuckles went white. And Bernice Hall surprised everybody. I do not want him jailed. The entire room shifted. Marcus looked up sharply. Navarro blinked. Even Dana Lowell turned her head. Bernice rested both hands on her cane. Let me be clear, she said. I want consequences. I want him to remember me every time he sees blue paint on pavement for the rest of his life. I want his daughter to know her father can stand in front of harm and call it by its name. But I do not believe a jail cell will teach the lesson this moment is already trying to teach. Judge Caprio folded his hands. Why not? Bernice took a slow breath. Because my husband went to prison when my boys were young. Not for this, for something worse. And I can tell you this much, humiliation alone does not make a man honest. Sometimes it just makes him harder. Fourth quote. Tyler looked down at the floor. He had heard that sentence before, maybe many times. The judge nodded. Bernice turned to Marcus. I am not here to save you, she said. I am here to see whether there is a man inside all that anger worth trusting not to do this again. Marcus's lower lip trembled once. He bit it hard. And then, right when it felt like the room had reached its limit, Mia stood up again. Not suddenly this time. Carefully. She walked to the rail before anyone could stop her and held out her spiral notebook toward the clerk. Maria Conti looked to the judge. Judge Caprio nodded. "What is that, sweetheart?" Mia's voice shook. "A letter." "For who?" "For if you took him." No one made a sound. Maria brought the notebook to the bench. It wasn't really a letter. It was 3 pages of lined school paper torn from the center, folded twice, written in pencil, child handwriting, some words backward, some letters floating too high, a pink crayon heart in the top corner. Judge Caprio opened it. He read the first line silently. Then he stopped. He took off his glasses and set them on the bench. That was the moment everyone in the room knew this was no longer just another hearing. This was the moment that would spread far beyond Providence, the kind of courtroom silence that feels bigger than the building holding it. If your chest is already tight, like this video now, and tell us in the comments if you think children should ever be allowed inside moments this heavy, because what Mia wrote changed the course of the entire case. Judge Caprio looked at Mia. "Did you want me to read this out loud?" She nodded. "It's okay." Marcus shook his head immediately. No, she doesn't have to." "Judge?" Caprio raised a hand. "Mia says it's okay." Then he began. "Dear Judge, if you have to put my dad in jail, can you tell him I put his blue pills by the toaster because he forgets in the morning? And can you tell him not to worry about me because I know how to make the macaroni without burning it now? And if they let me hug him first, I won't cry until after because he gets more sad when I cry in front of him." You could hear someone in the gallery exhale like they'd been punched. The judge kept reading slower now. "I know he yells, but it's mostly at the house and not at me. I think he is mad because my mom died and because bills come in the mail like ants. He says he is okay, but he falls asleep with his shoes on. I packed his toothbrush in my backpack in case jail doesn't have good ones. Please don't think he is bad. He is just having a hard year." There it was. The line. The one that made the clerk cry first. Then Bernice. Then Officer Lowell looked away and blinked several times. Then Marcus covered his face with both hands and folded in on himself, as if his bones could no longer hold him up. Judge Caprio lowered the page, but Mia had one more thing. "There's another page," she whispered. The judge nodded and continued. "If he says he does not need help, that is because he does. My mom used to say when people are drowning they don't wave nice. They slap the water. I think that is what he is doing. Please can somebody tell him he is still my dad even if he made dumb choices." That was the sentence that broke Marcus completely. Not jail. Not debt. Not public shame. That line. He began crying in the raw, humiliating way adults try not to do in public, shoulders shaking, breath gone uneven, no attempt to perform control, no attempt to hide. The judge set the letter down with extraordinary care. Marcus tried to speak and failed twice. Finally he got out, "I'm sorry." Nobody knew if he meant the court, the city, Bernice, Mia, Elena, maybe all of them. Judge Caprio gave him a full minute. No rescue. No interruption. Just space. That was mercy too. When Marcus finally looked up, his face was transformed. Same man, same clothes, same case, but gone was the swagger, gone was the posture, gone was the instinct to spar. What stood there now was a tired widower who had mistaken hardness for survival and found out too late his daughter had been keeping score. The judge asked softly, "Mr. Bell, when was the last time you told the truth all the way through?" Marcus laughed through tears, a terrible broken sound. "I don't know." The judge nodded once. Today would be a good day to restart your life. Fifth quote. Marcus pressed both palms flat on the wood. She asked me last month if jail is worse than the hospital, he said, and I told her no one was going to take me anywhere. Then my sister told her I missed court and there might be a warrant, and she stopped sleeping right. She keeps checking the lock at night. Mia looked down. Marcus continued, words spilling now. I've been mad at everything. At her mom for leaving even though she didn't choose it. At myself for not catching it sooner. At money. At that car. At the mailbox. At every damn envelope with a window in it. I parked where I shouldn't. I lied because I was ashamed. I missed court because I didn't want to stand here and look small, and all I did was make her carry it. Nobody moved. Because everyone in that room knew that was the first fully honest sentence he had spoken all day. Judge Caprio looked toward Mia. Sweetheart, do you want to sit closer to your dad? She nodded. Maria Conti opened the side gate. Mia walked to him slowly and stood beside the table. He dropped to one knee and she placed one hand on his shoulder, not like a child being comforted, but like a child offering it. If a camera had pushed in right then, the internet would have done the rest. But the truth is, the room itself was enough. Everyone there knew they were witnessing the kind of reversal people search for in courtroom videos without realizing how rare it really is. Not punishment, not performance, recognition. The judge then asked a question no one expected. Mia, did your mom ever write letters? Mia nodded, all the time. Do you have any with you? Mia looked at Marcus, then at her backpack. Marcus stared, confused. Mia unzipped the front pocket and pulled out a folded piece of pale yellow stationery decorated with tiny lemons in the corner. The courtroom seemed to inhale all at once. She handed it to her father first. I was keeping it for when you got mean again. Marcus looked like his heart had stopped. He unfolded it with shaking hands, then handed it to the clerk without even reading it fully. Judge Caprio read silently for several moments. Then he asked, "May I?" Marcus nodded, unable to speak. The letter was dated June 11, 2025, from St. Anne's Hospice, written by Alina Bell in careful slanted writing. Marcus, if you are reading this after I'm gone, promise me 2 things. First, do not turn your grief into anger and call it strength. Mia will learn the wrong lesson from that. Second, if you need help, ask before the house gets so dark she thinks that's what adulthood feels like. By now, half the gallery had tears in their eyes. The judge read the next line even more slowly. You were never too proud to carry me when I was weak. Do not become too proud to let someone carry you when it is your turn. Marcus was openly sobbing now. Mia rested her head against his shoulder. And then Judge Caprio said what may have been the most powerful sentence of the entire hearing. A courtroom can punish a man, he said, but only truth can change him. Sixth quote. Navarro lowered his gaze. Officer Lowell crossed her arms tighter, trying and failing to keep her own composure tucked away. Bernice Hall wiped her cheeks with a tissue she had pulled from her sleeve. This should have been the emotional peak. In another story, it would have been. But there was still one more turn. Judge Caprio asked Maria Conti for the contents of the sealed envelope again. This time, he read from the second page. Mr. Bell, do you know why I asked for this envelope? Marcus shook his head. It contains your partial payment record, not the one the city summarized, the full one. Navarro looked surprised. He apparently had not seen the updated ledger. The judge continued. Since July, you made 18 separate payments, most under $20, $9, $13, $11, $17, not enough to stop the sanctions process, but enough to show you were trying to chip away at it. Marcus blinked in confusion. Maria Conti clarified quietly, cash kiosk payments at different locations. Marcus whispered, "I forgot those counted." The judge looked at him carefully. "You forgot your own effort because it was too small to save you." That line sank deep. Because how many people live exactly like that? Doing tiny things to stay afloat, then convincing themselves they've done nothing at all. Navarro stepped forward. "Your Honor, the city does not dispute the payments, but it does maintain that repeated failure to appear and the conduct toward Ms. Hall justify sanctions." "Agreed," the judge said. "This is not a charity hearing." That restored balance. Mercy was on the table now, but justice had not left the room. Judge Caprio then turned directly to Marcus. "I need to know whether this breakdown is about consequences or conscience. There is a difference." Marcus lifted his head. "Both." "Which came first?" Marcus looked at Mia, then Bernice, then the wet shine still lingering on the courtroom monitor from the body cam footage. He answered like a man scraping his pride off the floor. "Consequences first, conscience after, but it's here now." The judge nodded. "Good answer." Then Dana Lowell asked permission to speak again. This was unusual. The judge granted it. Officer Lowell looked at Marcus, not hostile now, just direct. "When I wrote that citation," she said, "I thought you were just another guy who believed disabled people could wait. I still think you made a selfish choice, but I also reviewed the follow-up from that day. When EMS arrived, you stayed 22 minutes. You gave your number. You asked if Ms. Hall had insurance coverage. You were rude to me, yes, but you did not run." Marcus looked startled. He hadn't known that mattered. Dana continued, "And 2 weeks later, my office received an anonymous money order for $90 marked for the ladies' pharmacy trip. We couldn't process it because there was no case note attached. I'm asking now, was that you?" Marcus stared at her. Then he nodded. Another ripple through the room. "Why anonymous?" the judge asked. Marcus gave a hollow laugh, because apology felt embarrassing. Bernice closed her eyes briefly. There it was. The twist around 7,000 words. He had felt remorse. He just felt it in hiding. That made everything more human and more frustrating at the same time. Judge Caprio leaned forward. "Mr. Bell, listen carefully. Shame is a terrible architect. It builds secret apologies and public disasters." Seventh quote. Marcus let out a breath that sounded almost like surrender. Mia turned and looked at him with the stunned expression children get when they realize their parent has a life inside them they never understood. The judge then called a brief recess. Not because he needed time. Because everyone else did. The gavel tapped once, chairs creaked, people stood slowly, no one rushed for the door. Marcus sat with Mia beside him, head bowed, one hand over his eyes. Bernice Hall remained in the witness chair talking softly with Tyler. Dana Lowell stepped to the side and removed her body cam from habit, though it had not been recording in court. Maria Conti brought Mia a small cup of water. Angela Brooks knelt by the rail and whispered something to Marcus that made him nod and cry again. In the hallway, people were already murmuring versions of the same thing. This is going to go viral. Not because it was sensational. Because it was specific. Because the details made it real. The backpack with the toothbrush. The lemon stationery. The line about drowning people slapping the water. Those are the kinds of details millions remember. When court resumed 12 minutes later, the air felt cleaner somehow, like a storm had already passed but thunder still sat in the distance. Judge Caprio returned and spoke without looking at any notes. "Mr. Bell, I have considered the city's request for custodial sanctions. I have considered the injuries to Ms. Hall, your repeated failures to appear, your dishonesty with this court, your documented hardship, your partial payments, your daughter's letter, and your wife's." Marcus stood straighter. Mia held his hand. The judge continued, "You are not the victim of this case. Let us begin there. Ms. Hall was harmed by your selfish choice. Your daughter was frightened by your silence. This court was disrespected by your absence. And yet," he said, pausing, "I do not believe society is served by pretending pain automatically teaches wisdom." No one moved. Marcus looked like he was bracing for impact anyway. Then came the consequence. "I am not sending you to jail today." The sound in the courtroom wasn't applause. It was release. Sharp, collective, almost involuntary. Mia burst into tears and buried her face in Marcus's side. Marcus bent over her like he might collapse again. But the judge wasn't finished. And do not mistake that for escape. The room straightened right back up. Marcus looked up quickly. Judge Caprio's voice remained calm, but iron had entered it. "You will pay restitution related to Ms. Hall's out-of-pocket transportation and brace expenses in the amount of $480. You will complete 60 hours of community service with the Providence Mobility Access Center, where you will assist seniors and disabled residents with safe curb access and transportation coordination. You will attend an anger and grief counseling intake within 10 business days. You will return to this court in 60 days with proof of compliance. The remaining fines will be converted into a supervised payment plan of $20 per week. No excuses, no disappearances." Marcus nodded rapidly, tears still falling. The judge held up a finger. "And one more thing." Everybody leaned in. "You will write Ms. Hall a letter, not a text, not a money order, a letter, in your own hand. You will explain what you did, what you understand now, and what your daughter should never have had to carry because of it." Marcus whispered, "Yes, sir." Judge Caprio looked at Mia. "And you, young lady, are not responsible for holding your father together. Do you understand me?" Mia wiped her eyes and nodded. He softened further. "You may love him, you may encourage him, you may remind him where his pills are, but the grown-up work belongs to the grown-up." That line brought fresh tears to Angela Brooks and probably half the internet in advance. Then the judge looked back at Marcus for what felt like the final turning point. "Your daughter does not need a perfect father," he said. "She needs an honest one." Eighth quote. Marcus nodded like he'd just been handed both a warning and a lifeline. Bernice Hall asked if she could say one last thing. The judge allowed it. She turned toward Mia first. "Your mama was right," Bernice said. "Drowning people do slap the water, but people can be taught how to float." Then she looked at Marcus. "Don't waste the day you were just given." Marcus stepped away from the table and with the judge's permission approached Bernice. Not too close. Respectful, Tyler stood ready, protective but not hostile. Marcus spoke through tears. "I'm sorry I made your world smaller that day. Simple. Not polished. Perfect." Bernice took a breath and nodded. "Make somebody else's bigger," she said. That exchange alone would have carried the clip across every platform. But one last visual sealed it. As Marcus returned to his place, Mia reached into her backpack, pulled out the toothbrush she had packed for jail, and held it up with a shaky laugh cry. The whole courtroom broke. Even Judge Caprio laughed softly and covered his mouth for a second. "Keep that," he told Marcus, "as a reminder." Ninth quote, if you were counting. If you've made it this far, hit like because this is the exact moment most people never see coming. Accountability stayed, mercy stayed, and somehow both got stronger. Drop a comment telling us what lesson hit you hardest, because the second half of this story is where the real proof begins. Most courtroom stories end with the sentence. This one didn't. Because anyone can cry for a day. Transformation has to survive the parking lot. 63 days later, on January 14, 2026, at 10:12 a.m., case M25-41877 was called again. The same courtroom, same bench, same creak in the side door. But Marcus Bell did not look like the man from November. He wore a navy button-down shirt, sleeves rolled neatly, dark jeans without holes, and clean black Skechers. His beard was trimmed. His shoulders were still broad but no longer armored. Mia was there too, now with her hair in one smooth ponytail and a science fair ribbon clipped to the strap of her backpack. She wasn't gripping anything this time. She was smiling. Maria Conti called the case. Marcus stepped forward and said, clear as day, "Good morning, Your Honor." The room noticed. Judge Caprio noticed most of all. "Good morning, Mr. Bell. You look different." Marcus smiled faintly. "I feel different." The judge raised an eyebrow. "That remains to be seen." Gentle laughter. Then the compliance review began. The Providence Mobility Access Center submitted a letter on embossed letterhead signed by Director Simone Reeves. Marcus had completed not 60 but 84 service hours. He had assisted with van loading, curb ramp awareness outreach, wheelchair grocery transport, and winter sidewalk checks in South Providence and Federal Hill. One note in the letter stood out. Mr. Bell is especially effective with residents who are proud, embarrassed, or resistant to assistance, because he speaks to them without pity. That told you everything. Grief counseling intake had been completed at Harbor Community Wellness. 6 sessions attended. No missed appointments. Therapist note limited by privacy but sufficient compliance confirmed. Payment plan current. Restitution to Bernice Hall paid in full. And there was one more letter. Handwritten. From Bernice herself. Judge Caprio read portions aloud. Mr. Bell's first letter was rough, overwritten, and clearly drafted by a man trying too hard to sound respectable. His second letter sounded like himself, and that is the one I kept. Last week he carried my grocery bags from the curb to my kitchen and fixed the loose rubber strip on my front step without announcing himself like a hero. We talked about Alina. We talked about Mia. We talked about how shame makes people hide. I do not excuse what he did. I do, however, believe he is doing the harder work now. Marcus looked down, overwhelmed. Judge Caprio smiled slightly. That is a very good letter to receive. Then Angela Brooks spoke again from the gallery. She had attended voluntarily. Mia's sleeping through the night, she said. Her reading scores are up. She no longer checks the classroom door every time a loud knock happens in the hallway. A few people inhaled sharply at that. Because that was the long tail of fear. That was the consequence after the consequence. Judge Caprio looked at Marcus. Did you hear that? Marcus nodded, eyes wet again. Yes, sir. Then came the detail nobody expected. Mia had brought her own letter. Short this time, not folded like a surrender flag, held openly in both hands. The judge smiled. Would you like me to read it? She shook her head. I want to. Permission granted. Mia unfolded the page. Dear Judge Caprio, my dad is still loud sometimes, but now when he gets mad he says he is getting mad before he gets too mad. Also he helped Mrs. Hall when it snowed, and he makes eggs now without burning them. He still forgets his blue pills but not as much. He keeps the toothbrush on the fridge with a magnet because he said that was the day he stopped being stupid in public and started being honest in private. Thank you for not throwing him away. Not one person in that room stayed untouched. Judge Caprio blinked several times and gave a small nod. Thank you, Mia, he said. Then he turned to Marcus. You understand what she just gave you? Marcus answered immediately, a second chance. The judge shook his head. Proof. 10th quote. Marcus smiled through tears. Then the judge formally closed the sanction review, marked compliance substantial, waived remaining late penalties, and left the weekly payment plan intact until final balance satisfaction. That was the legal ending. But the human ending came from something even smaller. As court adjourned, Marcus asked if he could say one thing for the record. The judge allowed it. Marcus faced the room, not the bench. I spent a year thinking being strong meant never looking weak. What that did was make my daughter stronger than she had any right to be. I thought if I kept my mouth shut, I was protecting her. I was really making her live inside my silence. I parked where I wanted. I lied when I was scared. I hid when I was ashamed. And all of that looked like toughness from the outside. It was fear. That's all it was. He paused. Then the line came out that would travel almost as far as the judge's. If your child is learning adulthood by watching you drown, ask for help before they think panic is normal. 11th quote. The courtroom stayed absolutely silent for a second, then 3. Not because people didn't know what to do. Because they did. They knew they had just seen the rarest thing. In any justice story. Not acquittal. Not a takedown. Ownership. And when the clip hit the internet 2 days later, that is exactly what people responded to. Millions of views in a week. Comment sections split between those who thought Marcus had been handled too gently and those who believed the sentence was perfect. But almost everyone agreed on one thing. The child's letter changed everything. Teachers shared it. Therapists quoted it. Single parents wrote paragraphs under the video, saying they had never felt so exposed by a stranger's story. Former addicts said the line about drowning and slapping the water was exactly right. Disabled viewers thanked Bernice Hall for refusing to let empathy erase accountability. Fathers admitted they had been taught to hide until hiding became harm. And the clip people replayed most wasn't actually the question, "Are you sending Daddy to jail?" It was the answer Judge Caprio gave later, when the camera caught him leaning forward with quiet force. Mercy without accountability is weakness. Accountability without mercy is waste. 12th quote. That line went everywhere. Because it felt bigger than the courtroom. It was bigger than the courtroom. By March 2026, Marcus had become a volunteer speaker at 2 community workshops on grief, pride, and practical help for working parents in municipal debt. He never called himself a role model. In fact, the first thing he always said was, "I'm the wrong person to put on a poster. I'm the right person to tell you what happens if you wait too long." He brought the toothbrush to the first workshop. People laughed. Then cried. Bernice Hall attended one of those sessions too, seated in the second row with Tyler, who was smiling more easily now. When Marcus told the story of March 18 from her point of view, not his, Bernice nodded once. That was all the approval he needed. Mia turned 9 in April. She invited 3 girls from school, wore a denim jacket with little silver stars, and insisted on lemon cupcakes because Mom liked them and now we all do too. Marcus posted nothing about it online. No inspirational captions, no performative gratitude, just a small kitchen, a folding table, yellow frosting, and a man learning that repair is usually quiet. One evening in late April, Marcus wrote another letter to Judge Caprio. Not required, not requested, just sent. In it he said this: "You told me my daughter didn't need a perfect father. I wrote that on the inside of my glove box. There are still bills. There are still hard days. I still feel anger show up before language sometimes. But now I name it before it takes over the room. Mia says the apartment sounds less heavy. I know that's not a legal term, but it might be the most important one." That line never went public, but it could have. Because that is what transformation sounds like when it is real, not polished, not cinematic, useful. And maybe that's why this story stayed with people. Not because it was clean. Because it was. Because Marcus had done wrong in ways that mattered. Bernice had been hurt in ways that counted. Mia had carried fear she never should have been handed. The court had been lied to. The system had also made its own error. Everyone brought something broken into that room. What made the moment extraordinary was not that the damage disappeared. It was that the truth finally got more space than the excuses. That is rare. That is why millions watch. That is why one child's question can stop a courtroom colder than any gavel. And if you think about it, Mia never really asked whether her father was going to jail. Not only that, what she was really asking was whether the adults in charge knew the difference between a man who needed to be discarded and a man who needed to be confronted hard enough to change. Judge Caprio heard the deeper question. Then he answered it with the only thing strong enough to matter. Not softness. Not cruelty. Wisdom. If you believe more courtrooms should make room for truth without surrendering justice, hit that subscribe button right now. Like this video if Bernice Hall's forgiveness surprised you. Share this with someone who still thinks accountability and compassion are opposites. And before you go, drop a comment telling us this. If you had been on that bench, would you have chosen jail, mercy, or the exact path Judge Caprio chose? Because some cases are about the law. And some cases are about whether a family leaves the room more broken than it entered. This one answered that question in real time. A frightened little girl asked, "Are you sending Daddy to jail?" And by the time the hearing ended, the better answer had become clear. No, he was sending him back to the truth. And sometimes, for the right person at the right moment, that is the harder sentence. If this story stayed with you, comment "Honest Father" below so we know you watched to the end. Subscribe for more courtroom stories where justice doesn't just punish, it reveals. And if you want the next video, wait until you hear what happened when a teen laughed during sentencing, until one victim stood up and changed the entire room.